Many wars have been waged throughout the history of the Dune universe, but the most influential of these wars was without a doubt the Butlerian Jihad, a war which would ultimately leave humans free from their machine-empowered oppressors, but also plunge humanity into a dark ages in which interplanetary travel was either too slow to be considered practical or extraordinarily perilous. Generations of humankind endured the Butlerian Jihad. The Great Revolt lasted from 200 BG to 108 BG. According to the Dune Encyclopedia, the war was seeded on the planet Reaches, fourth planet from the Sun in the system of Eridani A. The planet Komos, a colony of Reaches, rose up in what would become known as the front for the end of Coman exploitation. The revolt was led by Gian Butler, who the Jihad would eventually be named for. After Gian's unborn child was killed by the AI director of a hospital, her and her husband sought out the priestess Urania. Urania worshipped the goddess Kubii of Komos. With Urania's help, they create a movement to destroy the dominion of the planet Reaches. Gian would eventually pull off a bloodless victory against Reaches, seizing control of a fleet and transport to Reaches. Once in control of the world, they discovered that for hundreds of years the planet had actually been under the control of thinking machines, enabled by their programmers who had participated willingly in their actions. They facilitated the machines in altering the intellectual and emotional characteristics of the world's population. Once the other priests of Kubii on Komos were informed of this horrifying revelation, the fire of the Jihad was sparked. Eventually, all those who survived the wars on Reaches, which included many technological technicians, were relocated to the planet Komos, which would later become known as Ix. The first mission of the Jihad was to take down interstellar communications. Centrans was one of the first targets. Centrans was a computer bank which had been built on a man-made satellite called Xenophon. Centrans had been created by Transcom, a trading company which existed during that time, a protoform of the later Chome Company. Centrans was able to perform calculations necessary to navigate ships through hyperspace and transmit the information containing the coordinates by use of the Holtzman wave, facilitated by the Holtzman effect. The computer could calculate thousands of Transcom ships at once. The attack on Centrans would have a great effect on interstellar travel for decades to come. Historical analysis of the first 20 years of the Jihad clearly indicate that the Jihad had a preference for power plays over violence. This minimized the bloodshed. During the attack on the planet Elurda in the year 199 BG, the Jihad was able to merely, through use of clever ships and the arrangement of their forces, cause the Elurdians to abandon their moon and eventually surrender their entire world. There had been a few casualties. 2 ships had made an attempt to escape through the planetary blockade and were destroyed, but other than that, the victory was bloodless. Rather than crushing opponents by the overwhelming application of the force of the vessels and troops of the Jihad fleet, the threat of such an attack was used to compel the surrender of the enemy. The intelligent use of power treats force as a tool best used when it remains implicit. One's superior strength is used not to obliterate an enemy, but to force surrender, ideally without battle. This principle of the Jihad seems somewhat reminiscent of the Foundation's philosophy of nonviolence from Isaac Asimov's classic sci-fi universe. The Jihad's preference for power plays over violence, however, would cease after the events of the planet Carthagos. Interestingly enough, the tactical situation during the attack quite resembled the one of Elurda, and initially it played out similarly. Gian Butler captained her ship, the Sarah III, the third ship named for her unborn daughter who had been killed by AI. In Sarah III, Gian led a maneuver which had been constructed to draw the defenses of the planet's moon into an indefensible position, while at the same time making sure a path to planetary retreat remained open. Once the Cathargans had retreated to their planet, a blockade similar to the one that took place on Elurda could be formed, forcing a surrender. But it did not play out that way this time. Gian's ship encountered an undetected mine and was destroyed. All perished. News of Gian's death swelled through the ranks, and the initial plan was abandoned. Compelled by sheer rage and bloodlust, Xi'an's fleet exterminated everyone on the planet. Though Xi'an was dead, the jihad continued. Xi'an became a martyr and the jihad became more cruel. The original goal of the jihad had been the destruction of mechanical technology which operated at the expense of human values. But after Xi'an's death, it was replaced by a philosophy of indiscriminate slaughter. Millions of humans would be slaughtered by human hands before the jihad would be at an end, and billions more as the result of the Dark Ages. The violence would finally be put to rest in 108 BG after all the thinking machines had been violently removed from the Imperium. Worlds who had greatly depended on thinking machines for trade, medicine, government were heavily affected. Many died of disease, many starved. The feudalistic system we see for much of the Dune universe arose out of this turmoil as well. The state was replaced by nobility. Without a doubt, the Butlerian Jihad had a tremendous impact on the technological, political, and social evolution of humankind going forward. The passage, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind," was placed into the religious text known as the Orange Catholic Bible. And they didn't stop at the truly intelligent machines dismantled during the Butlerian Jihad. Even the simplest of devices were outlawed under penalty of immediate death, including basic calculators. Due to humanity's inability to perform complex calculations, quality of life had significantly dropped. This led to the formation of groups like the Mentat, the Empire's human computers, the Spacing Guild, who possessed human navigators, and the secretive Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. And biotechnology was created by the Tleilaxu, which would replace much of the intelligent technology used before the Jihad. It was the Ixians who would continue to push the bounds of the Jihad's limitations, so much so that the God Emperor Leto II intervened. The version of the Butlerian Jihad that is described in the original Dune saga and in the Dune Encyclopedia differs quite a bit from what is described in the work of Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert, so later I will be doing a separate video on the Legends trilogy, which details their version of events. In either version, the Butlerian Jihad was bloody and highly taxing on the whole of humanity. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Do you like puppies? Well, if you want to support the life of this adorable puppy, consider supporting my Patreon. Link in the description.